What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the My Gardener channel. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you a very quick way to have a no-till garden throughout fall and winter. Now, this is not a permanent no-till garden. This is very temporary, but it's applying the idea of no-till gardening in the garden in a very simple, very lightweight, cheap way. Now, no-till gardening is great, and I've always said that you should be striving towards a no-till garden because a no-till garden simulates nature. It actually is very minimally invasive to the soil. You're not rototilling the soil, you're not flipping the soil, and so therefore the soil structure can stay intact. You're not going to be flipping it and turning it all the time, and that way you're actually going to end up over time with healthier, more loose and rich soil. But the downside is that a lot of people just don't have the time to have a true no-till garden, and that's fine. The idea behind this channel is sharing with you all the varieties of gardening methods to find something that works for you. And the really nice thing is that this method that I'm going to show you can apply to a no-till purist, if you're that type of person, or someone that might rototill their garden in the spring and then use a cover in the fall like leaves or wood chips or straw or grass clippings, something like that in the fall so that they don't have to rototill in the fall. You know, you're working towards a no-till garden, but you're not quite there yet because you're still using a rototiller in the spring. And that's fine too. That's fine too. This method will work for you. And that's what I really love is just kind of bridging the gap between all the gardening methods to give you something that you can take right out into the garden and grow big or go home with it. So with that being said, let's go. So the first thing you're going to do to this method is you're going to take something like leaves and you're going to put leaves on the garden. Or if you're using grass clippings, you're going to use grass clippings, throw those on the garden. Take something that's going to break down in a fast time frame, right? You could use things like wood chips, but they don't break down quite as fast. But you're going to use something like grass clippings, something like straw or leaves, and you're going to cover the soil, right? That's your organic matter that's going to break down. Then you're going to implement a tarp. All right, and once you've gotten your leaves down, you're going to take your leaves and you're going to cover them with a tarp. Check it out. So I got my leaves on my raised bed and I've got them covered with a tarp. Now, the idea why I'm doing this is a really great way to do three things. And I'll explain why this tarp is so amazing. One, the tarp acts as a barrier on top of a barrier. We have our organic material that's going to be breaking down underneath the tarp, right? So that is going to be breaking down. That's a barrier, which is going to help to insulate the soil, help to break down and add organic matter to the soil. But then we have a barrier on top, which is the tarp. And what that's going to do is it's going to encourage worms to come through the entire soil column. What happens when you just take leaves, you throw them on your raised bed? Well, in the spring, you're going to have a layer on top that's not broken down. It's going to be something you either have to move or rototill in or work in, or it's going to be blowing throughout your garden because it hasn't broken down yet. And the reason why is because earthworms don't come through the entire soil column because once they see sunlight, they turn around. That's because worms like to stay where it's cool, dark, and damp. And so by throwing a tarp on top, it's going to block all that sunlight so that the earthworms are going to be encouraged to come through the entire soil column and work all of those leaves that you have. The earthworms are nature's rototiller, right? That's the first thing the tarp's going to do. The second thing the tarp is going to do is it's going to actually keep the soil warm. Because you have leaves down and then a tarp on top, it's going to actually create an air gap, an air barrier. And air is a wonderful insulator. And so if you're someone that wants to garden earlier in the season, you're actually going to be getting about 1 to 2 weeks of an earlier start because the soil is going to thaw that much faster and stay that tiny little bit warmer so that when the entire surrounding garden is still kind of thawing and frozen, this is going to be ready to work and you can plant your early spring crops right away, which is awesome. And then the third thing that this tarp is going to do is it's actually going to smother out weeds. You see, weeds are a big reason why gardeners feel like they have to rototill because it's a fast way to just kind of till them under and be gone with you, right? The problem is that as soon as those weeds see sunlight, they start to grow and then they're thriving. And the unfortunate thing with things like leaves or grass clippings or even wood chips is that if it's not thick enough, if it's not dense enough, the weeds are just going to pop right through. And so by throwing a tarp on top, what it's going to do is it's going to block that sunlight, For the same reasons that the earthworms can come up and work your leaves and work the soil, it's also going to block the sunlight to prevent things like weed pressure. And that is going to allow you to have far less work in the springtime because all those weeds that would have grown are instead, they're snuffed out and they're dead. You just have to remember to keep this on long enough so that weeds that sprout in the spring are killed off. If you're using this for weed suppression, you're going to want to leave it on your garden for about probably 3 to 5 weeks into the beginning of spring. So if it's for weed pressure, you got to wait a little bit, but it's going to be very effective because weeds that can't access sunlight end up withering and dying. And that's awesome as well. So now you have the organic matter that's breaking down from the leaves. You have the added benefit of an early start to spring with the insulation, but then you also have reduced weed pressure, all from a tarp. It's so incredible. Again, regardless if you're going with truly no-till gardening or whether you're tilling your garden and then doing this in the fall, this is a method that anybody can do. It's super simple, super cheap, and it's really lightweight. I love it because these tarps, you can get them in different sizes, shapes and sizes, depending on your size of garden. And you can just throw them down. And then when the springtime comes, fold them up and throw them in your shed, throw them in your garage. They're so lightweight, but the benefits are so incredible. So again, this is not something that everybody is going to do. This is not something that you might not want to do, but I want to be able to give you the opportunity to learn something because the more you know, the more you can grow. And so I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. As always, this is Luke from the My Gardener channel reminding you to grow big or go home, and we'll catch you all later. See ya. Bye.